He grabbed my hand, and together we stepped through the box, entering a glittering world that was vastly unlike anywhere I'd ever visited, which became a place that held my heart in a tight grip that was reluctant to let go. It was the end of another grueling school day, and right as I've shut my locker, preparing to leave the school building to return to the comfort of my home, I caught sight of my dear friend Lancaster standing outside my locker, smiling. "Hey, Alissa, are you busy later?" he asked, moving a piece of curly brown hair out of his electric blue eyes. I glared back at him, thinking for a moment. I glanced down at the textbooks I currently held in my arms, which reminded me of the mountain of homework I'd been assigned to complete that weekend, and one of the first things on my agenda was diving headfirst into it when I got home. I hesitated, keeping my gaze on Lancaster, who still awaited a response. To be truthful, while I had much better things to do, I was just as tempted to hear him out, and was curious as to why he wanted to know my plans. Sort of, I replied, finally rescuing us from the awkwardness that had arisen between us. I have things on my agenda that need attending to, but I'm still willing to hear you out. Is this something important? It's then that Lancaster glanced down at the books I'm carrying before glancing up at me again, this time apologetically. I just had something interesting that I wanted to show you, but it can wait. I don't want to distract you from whatever you've got going on, and judging from the books you're carrying, I assume that you were also assigned a mountain of homework. I chuckled slightly. You too, huh? I asked. He nodded. Yup. It's honestly as if none of our teachers understand that we actually have a life outside of high school, you know? I mean, do they really think that doing endless piles of homework is a good way of spending our time? I think not. He proceeded to roll his eyes in dramatic fashion, which resulted in me laughing uncontrollably. I honestly loved seeing Lancaster's humorous side, and I couldn't get enough of it. It just never got old. But then again, one has to keep their grades up, right? He continued. I nodded in agreement. Silence briefly arose between us again, but then Lancaster broke it by saying, Well, if you ever decide you need a break from your homework, don't hesitate to let me know, okay? I understand that I seem so eager to show you the discovery I made in my attic the other day, because I certainly am, seeing as I'd love for another person to experience it. But aside from that, I genuinely love spending time with you, Alissa. After all, it's your choice. No pressure whatsoever. Yeah, no, I definitely see your point, Lancaster, and I appreciate it. The smile returned to his face. Well, in the meantime, I'll leave you to setting your priorities. I'm just so eager to show you what I found. I have a feeling you'll be just as amazed by it as I was. I'd say more, but I don't want to spoil the surprise. He paused before continuing. Whatever you decide, I hope to see you, Alissa. Good luck on the homework, especially the literary analysis essay Miss Cornwall assigned us. You're gonna need it. He winked before turning around and walking away, leaving me alone again. Seeing as our interaction was over, I sighed before ultimately exiting the building myself and heading over to the student parking lot where my car sat parked. While my drive home was silent, in the back of my mind, I couldn't help thinking about what Lancaster said to me earlier, and how eager he seemed by the prospect of showing me something cool he found in his attic the other day. He had a glimmer of hope behind his eyes upon telling me, aside from appearing eager. Despite being occupied with other obligations, I'm not going to lie, his offer sounded incredibly tempting, and I soon found myself with an increasing curiosity to see what he meant by everything. Maybe I'd stop by after all, I thought, as I turned the corner onto my street. But first, I'd like to make a dent in my literary analysis essay before making any drastic changes to my plans. Lancaster's surprise could wait. I quickly learned just how unrelenting my curiosity would become, even as I concentrated working on my literary analysis essay. For several hours afterward, as I remained up in my room, with my headphones droning out the world with music, I genuinely couldn't stop thinking about it. Thoughts of my friend's surprise nagged at me constantly, and I was left pondering a series of unanswered questions. It was as if I were filled with fleeting whimsy and intrigue over where it might lead. In doing so, however, I trusted, as I always had in the many years I've known him, that Lancaster had good intentions. Of course he did, I thought. When did he ever give me a reason not to trust him? That was so unlike the Lancaster I've grown up with. He's one of the most honest guys I know. In my eyes, my best friend could do no wrong. I returned to writing my essay, but sometime later I became distracted again, so I took a break as my brain felt heavy. I was reaching the point where my curiosity was getting the better of me. I just had to know. I had to. How could I not? Screw it, I muttered, taking my headphones off and shutting my laptop. I'm texting Lancaster. I really don't know how much longer I can go without knowing what his surprise means. Finally, giving in to my curiosity, I tapped my phone screen and drafted the following message to Lancaster. To Lancaster Williams, from Alissa Blakely. Okay, I've officially changed my mind. I'm incredibly desperate to see what you've been wanting to show me. I honestly can't stop thinking about it, and my curiosity has grown restless. Mind if I stop by your house soon? Thanks, Alissa. After completing the message, I hit send and anxiously awaited a reply. Thankfully, to my surprise, I didn't have to wait long because Lancaster's reply came in 3 minutes later. To Alissa Blakely, from Lancaster Williams. Hey Alissa, sounds good. I'm bursting with excitement at the prospect of showing you. I literally feel like combusting from all the joy. Eek, this is going to be a blast. Smiley face. See you soon, Lancaster. It was settled then. I'd be seeing Lancaster after all, and finally uncover the mystery behind what he wanted me to see. I sensed his excitement radiating through his previous text message, and soon enough, I was met by a wave of excitement that slipped inside my stomach. I was just as eager as he was, and I didn't know how much longer I could keep it contained. Not wanting to waste more time, I got off my bed and proceeded to prepare myself for my visit with Lancaster. I quickly threw on my Carolina blue hoodie along with a pair of checkered sneakers. As a final touch, I also pulled my wavy chestnut hair into a bun. With that, I grabbed my purse and promptly made my way over to Lancaster's house. He greeted me with open arms upon answering the door, and before I knew it, he was already leading me to the upstairs attic where, unbeknownst to me, the real fun would begin. Despite the uncertainty surrounding everything, Lancaster had a mischievous gleam to his already eager demeanor, similar to the way young kids get whenever they were happy about something. Either way, it was incredibly charming to watch unfold, and strangely enough, I found myself harboring the same sense of mischief and childlike wonder that he held, and I did nothing to quell it. His attic was messy, dimly lit, and stuffy, with all sorts of memorabilia strewn around everywhere, which fit the stereotype of most attics, in addition to giving the place the illusion that it hadn't properly been sorted through or cleaned in ages, which I didn't mind, and wasn't one to judge. Are attics ever really clean? I thought, while glancing at the disarray that surrounded me. From what I could make out in the dim light, there were a variety of old picture frames, artwork, and antiques sticking out of a few of the boxes that made up a majority of the room. Was what Lancaster had to show me either an antique or a special family heirloom? I thought. Looking around the attic, I was still unsure over what it would be, but nonetheless, I willingly played along. Were we even allowed to be up here? I thought. While I didn't question his motives, being up here alone with him felt strangely forbidden, making me feel like one serious rebel for agreeing to go along with him. Hopefully his parents wouldn't mind. Getting on their bad side wasn't something I wanted, after all. I pushed the thought away while we continued searching. The silence between us had grown thick with each passing moment, but it never bothered me. Finally, though, not long into our adventure, Lancaster's voice broke the thick cloud of silence that had arisen over the room. "Aha!" he proclaimed. "I finally found it, Alissa." He beckoned for me to join him in a random corner of the attic, and I willingly obliged, where I saw him kneeling before a medium-sized mahogany wooden box. I perked up immediately upon laying my gaze onto it. In addition to the gorgeous paint adorning it, I noticed that it was also embroidered with pretty swirling patterns painted a deep black. Lancaster briefly broke concentration from the box and glared at me, still beaming. "This is what I wanted to show you," he said. Not long after he made that statement, that was when everything changed. While the box conveyed an ordinary appearance, I'd eventually discover that what lay beyond it was far from normal. I then caught on to a shift within Lancaster's mannerisms, because although his eagerness remained persistent, I spotted a sliver of seriousness to him, which began making me feel slightly uneasy. And it was something that was impossible to shake. "Are you ready, Alissa?" he asked. I met his gaze and mimicked his seriousness. With a shaky voice, I replied, "Ready for what?" He cleared his throat and answered, "To explore the glories that await." I hesitated somewhat as my heart beat like a drum inside my chest. I started to doubt everything now. Was I really ready for this? I thought. After how far I've come, I don't think turning back was an option. After all, I wanted more than ever to see what was inside this box, and I was honored that Lancaster was granting me the opportunity to be his companion. I wasn't going to give in to my fears solely to miss out on an opportunity of a lifetime, was I? Surely I'd regret it if I did. Screw my fears, I thought. They can shut the hell up for all I cared. I'm not going to listen to the voices of uncertainty. Right then, swallowing my doubts, I eyed Lancaster confidently and nodded, trusting him ultimately. I watched as he opened the box, and shortly after he did, time passed by in a blur. Together, we stood up, and he quickly grabbed my hand as we both stared down into the box, which now glowed with glittery light, an act often associated with fairy tales. I practically felt like I was in one solely from looking at the box. Before I could properly grasp what was happening, with my hand still in his, Lancaster and I stepped inside the box, where, as if like magic, the attic vanished around us, replaced by a scene that was far more beautiful and breathtaking. I felt as if I were dreaming as I surveyed my environment in awe. Was this real? I thought. Was any of this real? Suddenly, the puzzle pieces formed together in my mind about what I'd witnessed. Lancaster had led me into another world through the box, which transported us into a place packed with whimsy, wonder, dreams, and utter fantasy. I didn't know where I was, but despite that, I was starstruck over what I was seeing. This glittering place, this perfect little magical hidey hole, was directly in front of me. First, Lancaster and I stood in a forest typically associated with what's written about in fantasy novels and adventure films, before the scene quickly shifted again. Now, we stood in the middle of a crowded room comprised entirely of tree bark that was adorned with beautiful fairy lights and thick, long stretches of moss. The scene before us looked like some sort of fancy, glittering party, and I felt as if we were crashing in on the fun, seeing as the two of us stuck out like sore thumbs. The only thing that was abnormal about this party were the guests in attendance, seeing as a majority of them came in a wide variety of mythical creatures, stemming from dwarves, elves, hobbits, unicorns, angels, fairies, werewolves, and the like. We were two humans surrounded by non-humans, but as strange as it was, I didn't care about any of that. Both of us remained silent while the party obliviously continued around us. Suddenly, the demeanor of it changed when the lights dimmed, giving the room even more of a magical effect as the guests around us began slow dancing, while a male fairy dressed in a glittery gray suit played a beautiful violin song. Now I was surely dreaming, right? Lancaster then broke me from my daze by turning towards me and saying, "See, Alissa, this is what I meant by surprise. Isn't it incredible?" Through my shock, I managed to reply, "Yes, but how long have you known about this?" He laughed. "Not long, but regardless, it'll be our little secret, if you're okay with keeping it that way, of course." "Definitely," I said. "If there's anything about me, it's that I'm good at keeping secrets. And this is one of the many reasons why I love you, Allie." My cheeks grew hot upon hearing that. Such flattery. It was rather unexpected, but much appreciated. Speaking of unexpected, I was caught off guard once more by Lancaster extending his hand towards me and asking, "I know this is cliché, but will you have this dance with me?" I smiled. As far as I was concerned, we were the only ones not dancing, so why not take chances tonight while we could? "It's my honor, dear friend." I took his hand and followed his lead, letting him guide me across the floor while I drank in the magic of the moment, unsure of when it would end, but simultaneously wishing it had remained this way for eternity. I didn't know how exactly Lancaster felt, but I knew certainly that I wanted to stay down here forever. For as long as possible, I hoped not to return to the grimness of reality. Instead, I preferred living in the present, and I was completely content with doing so.